The U.S. Navy conducts a variety of training and testing activities at sea, including the use of mid-frequency active sonar. The use of lookouts, mitigation, and shutdown zones minimize impacts to marine life near the exercises. But what effect could active sonar have on marine mammals 5, 10, or even 20 or more miles away?
Does it cause them to miss a feeding, or does it cause them to slightly avoid an area? We want to know what those reactions are going to be.
The data that we have is kind of pieced together, and really very little of it comes from beaked whales, which is one of the species of primary concern.
Filling this data gap is an important step in allowing the Navy to accurately assess potential environmental impacts and develop effective mitigation.
But to get at some of those, you need to ask the question of, did one individual change its behavior given the exposure context, and did it change specific kinds of behavior?
To answer these questions, the Navy has funded a behavioral response study with a team of experts including Duke University, South Hall Environmental Associates, the University of St. Andrews, Cascadia Research Collective, and HDR.
The overall goal is to look at the response of beaked whales and pilot whales to mid-frequency active sonar. And what we're really trying to build is a dose-response curve.
The dose-response curve will allow researchers and Navy environmental planners to predict the likelihood of a marine mammal's reaction to a given sound level. Developing the curve requires a lot of data, and studying deep-diving marine mammals in the wild is difficult.
They dive for an hour and come up somewhere within a few miles of where they went down, and you just sit there and you wait.
When they're below the surface, the only way to monitor their movements and behavior is by tagging.
We're obviously not seeing them, but the tags record their movements.
We need to know certain scales for, instantaneous behavioral reactions, for example, but we also need to know what are the animals doing hours, days, weeks after an exposure.
Since no single tag technology can provide all the information, the team is using a combination of multi-sensor digital acoustic tags, or D-tags, and satellite tags, which track the whale's locations over days or weeks. D-tags record fine-scale data such as depth, ascent and descent rates, and audio of the whale's echolocation clicks.
Pilot whale now on a dive, clicking as it heads down, looking for food.
And their calls.
Which they tend to make at we think they make a lot more at the surface when they're socializing with each other.
We have the D-tags looking at responses on the order of seconds to minutes to hours, whereas the satellite tags are looking on the order of hours to days to weeks in terms of that response. And so it actually gives us the continuum right through from very short-term responses right through long ones.
And what we're trying to do is utilize the strengths of both of those technologies working together.
We've got a couple groups of animals here in their location.
To get realistic response data, the team coordinates directly with Navy ships that are involved in ongoing training activities, while also monitoring the movements and behavior of individual whales before, during, and after an exposure to sonar.
We're going to go about 8 or 10 more miles to the north and head your way. Roger.
We're able to ask the question using the actual sound source, which is giving a context similar to what's occurring in the training operation.
By plotting the data from multiple tagged whales in the area, plus tag data from the whales and other sonar exposure events, scientists are collecting the data needed to understand how varying levels of sonar exposure affect the whales.
Is it different when they're exposed to sonar, and at what levels of sonar do they change their behavior or start doing something differently?
There's animals over here, there's animals over there, and they're getting those varying degrees of exposure, which helps us build those dose response curves.
Temperature, salinity, depth, and the composition of the seafloor all affect how sound travels through water. To account for these environmental conditions, the team relies on sophisticated modeling software and near real-time data, as well as the locations of tagged animals, to plan controlled exposure events.
We have a picture of the sound environment. Here, if we have the animal at the location T here, what this is showing us is the sound level that this animal would receive based on different orientations of the ship in this area. So blue is quiet, red is loud. As you get closer to the ship, It's generally louder, and further away it's generally quieter, but there's a lot of complexity in here. This is 30 miles. So we can have places where it's louder if the ship is 25 miles away as opposed to 10 miles away.
By properly accounting for these variables, the researchers have a better understanding of the sound levels the animals experience at various distances from the ship.
That difference in what the sound level that the animals got can be huge. I mean, it can be, orders of magnitude different. So it's unraveling these complexities of the physical environment that are really real from the animal's perspective.
Beyond the tag data, the team has recently begun examining tissue biopsy samples for additional clues.
We can look at sex and reproductive status. And then what I'm really focusing on with this project is their stress levels. So we'll look at hormones like cortisol.
With each whale that's tagged, the team improves our understanding of how sonar may be affecting these whales.
And so it's just a matter of getting out there and getting a lot of tags on animals and getting more and more data points to populate the analysis with.
It all feeds into the bigger picture of trying to determine what the long-term consequences are.
Being able to have that understanding at that level of detail, you just can't get that without these types of experiments.
And so I think we're at this really exciting period of time where we're starting to collect all this new data, and I think that's going to be a critical piece for management of these really important species.
There's a very specific and direct application for the Navy in their environmental planning for assessing mid-frequency sonar, but there are some things that we're learning out of these types of studies that are just improving our ability to evaluate how animals are potentially affected by human sound in general.